You are tuned in to Making a Difference with Melissa Billy Clark. This show shares compelling stories and experiences of well-known faces and everyday people who change the world in big and small ways. Get ready to open your mind and your heart with Melissa Billy Clark.
As we progress into the future, technology has no plans on slowing down. We are constantly looking for the next best and high-speed device that will assist us in our everyday lives. We fail to think of the dangers the new generation's wireless technologies can do. Studies show more young males are developing colon cancer due to their back pockets as phone holders. Join us today as we speak with Camilla Rees. Camilla is a former financial industry executive who has done extensive research, produced, and wrote about technology risks. She is the founder of Manhattan Neighbors for Safer Telecommunications at manhattanneighbors.org. But first, we speak with restaurant owner of Inwood Farm, Bosco. We discuss the ongoing topic of the cancel culture and how an honest answer changed him and his employees' lives. Hi, I'm Melissa Billy Clark, and this is Making a Difference. Today, we have the pleasure to speak with restaurant owner Tom Bosco of Inwood Farm, located at 600 West 218th Street in New York City. We not only discuss his amazing establishment with farm-raised cuisine, but we also talk about what he did for his community and how some of the members of his community turn their back on him. Yes, folks, this episode touches upon the frustrating world of cancel culture. Tom, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Melissa.
Thank you, Tom. Now, your restaurant, Inwood Farm, was open throughout the pandemic, and you tried to do the right thing. However, it took a turn. Kindly share with the audience what happened.
Yeah,
as brief as you can. We don't get into politics that much here, so just try to be, but we want to hear your story.
I don't get into politics either, which is great, but, and that's worth noting, actually. What happened was we decided to stay open from day one of the pandemic. We sit right on a park, so we wanted to be of service to the community. We wanted to pour coffee, plant flowers. We gave away baked goods to the hospital. We were doing a lot of things that made us an attractive story to the news. MSNBC knocked on our door and asked us if we would share our experience about what it was like to do business in the middle of a pandemic. And this is like April, when other people were closed. We were open, being of service to our community, keeping people employed, and doing things like paying for daycare for my single mother workers. So that's an attractive story. I went on our Ari Melber show. About 45 minutes into talking about all these things that I and three other entrepreneurs or citizens had done in daily life to cope with COVID, he asked what I thought of the federal response to the pandemic. I gave him an honest answer, and when I thought it was a 50-50, and then he asked me who I voted for. From there, it all began. My world got lit on fire.
Tell us what happened to you.
Yeah.
When you came out, that episode came out.
So the episode didn't come out for about 4 weeks, but I had, because I was proud of the work that we had done in the community and being of service to the community, posted the interview on my Facebook page. So we took it off of my Facebook page, put it on a community page, and said he voted for Trump in 2016. And within hours, 200 comments, 300 comments, people boycotting the restaurant, calling me up, threatening my life, threatening my dog's life, threatening the employees. And it got worse and worse, to the point where, I was eventually chased with a bat, driven off the road, had my windshield broken. I couldn't go to the supermarket without being harassed and bullied. It was a real tough period.
Did you regret saying who you voted for, which is a personal choice to everybody?
I regret it, and it's interesting because the New York Times asked me the same question. I regret it in the sense that I should have known better than to answer the question, but it wasn't a show about politics, so I thought it was just like us having a conversation. So I do regret saying it because of the effect it had, a little on me, but mostly the effect it had on my employees in the establishment. Sometimes when you answer a question like that, in the heat of the moment, you wish you could take it back because of the effect it has on other people. and you don't really get the opportunity to explain it when it's edited down to something.
Did you feel responsible that people were boycotting your restaurant and your employees were suffering at that time? Did you feel
Oh
responsible?
yeah, definitely. There's cause and effect to it, and that's undeniable. Like you can argue all you want about whether I should have said it or shouldn't have said it, or even my decision in 2016. We could talk about that forever, but it's undeniable the effect that comment had on my employees.
How did you feel at that time, Tom?
I was hurt. I was really hurt. I wish I'd had the self-control is not right word. I just wish I would have had the awareness, because it's not a big part of my life. You will never find a comment like that on my Facebook page. I don't boast about politics. I'm certainly getting conversations with people. I'm a really liberal guy. Yeah. It's not anything that defines me. Yet at that moment, people were letting it define me, and then also letting it define the establishment and the people who work here.
So now here we are. When was that interview?
That interview was at the end of May.
The end of May of this year?
No, of 2020.
2020. Okay. Yep. So how is everything now? We are in the fall of 2021. Yeah.
It's funny. I can safely say that the restaurant has survived two things: the cancel culture, and it survived the pandemic, and it's flourishing. Now that year was, we still get hijacked when we post pictures of our food online. Someone will make a comment, but through a process of kind of showing up every day, being a good citizen, which I always was, and just kind of doing the next right thing throughout the day, throughout the year, I don't know if it's passed, but we don't recognize it.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, you stayed open throughout the whole pandemic. So you were doing good for your community.
Yeah. I'd like to say one thing. It's like, at that moment, and we touched on this when we were talking, I have a sponsor. And I call my sponsor up kind of like a spiritual advisor. And I remember calling this guy up and I need some advice. MSNBC, blah, 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 all this stuff. And he said, this is big stuff, right? He says, Tom, I can't talk right now. He goes, but I'm going to call you back. In the meantime, I suggest you get on your hands and knees and you pray to help your higher power see the gift, right? This is over the phone. And then he pauses and I'm like, oh boy, here we go with the spiritual advice, right? And he goes, in this one. And just the way he said in this one, it's like, when someone says another growth opportunity, I chuckled. And at that moment, he and I both were, there was just a moment of levity right there that gave me a moment to have something other than fear creep in. And I did. I got down on my hands and knees and I prayed to God to help me see the gift in this one. And quite honestly, those things started coming right away, instantly. The ability to be an instrument of peace. I won't go on and on, but that was a key.
Tom, Tom and I, we had a pre-interview and he was telling me that he is a recovering alcoholic.
Yep.
Okay. And that must have been hard for you because when pressure does come on and things are happening to you, we run for something, a substance to help us get through the pain. So thank you for sharing that with us, Tom. How are you today? How long have you been in recovery for?
I've been in recovery for 13 years.
Wow.
Yep. And it's funny, when something like that happens, I don't even think of a drink or anything like that. It's, I thought to call my sponsor, right? I thought to be of service to the community. I thought of the St. Francis prayer. All these things that have kind of crept in my life that are a benefit and a gift of recovery and tools that I can use other than other things.
I really appreciate you bringing that up. And, people don't realize the effect, like when they're canceling you out because they don't believe in the same beliefs that you do, but they don't know what you're going through as a human being and what can trigger a lot of things. And I just wish people would be a little bit more mindful of that when it comes to this cancel culture that we live in right now, because yeah, so I'm glad that you got through that. If you're looking for farm-to-table cuisine, you're going to want to head to Inwood Farm, located at 600 West 218th Street in New York City. This community-driven restaurant will have you coming back for more with the freshest foods and cozy atmosphere. Hi, I'm Melissa Billy Clark, and on this episode of Making a Difference, we explore 5G and some of the dangers behind it. Camilla Rees, MBA, is a former financial industry executive, author of The Wireless Elephant in the Room, and producer on technology risk. She is spending more time on research on electromagnetic fields, also known as EMF. Kamala is also the founder for ManhattanNeighbors.org, which is a website that brings awareness to the harmful effects that cell phones, wireless computer equipment, neighborhood cell towers, and antennas can have on us. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Thank you very much, Melissa. Delightful to be here with you.
Thank you so much. We met through the wonderful Carol Alt, and we are so happy to have you on to educate us on this matter. In passing, I told someone that we are having a segment about this, discussing 5G, and they said, "What's 5G?" So it's fairly new. It came out in late 2018. Please tell us what please tell the audience what 5G is.
Okay, so before we really start talking about 5G, we have to talk about electromagnetic fields in general, because 5G is just the next generation of the electromagnetic fields that we've been exposed to increasingly since about 1990. Previously, these microwaves or radio frequency radiation have been used for military and industrial purposes, but it's really in the very beginning of the 90s that you saw the cell phones in the marketplace. You saw the cell towers going up and the antennas, and it's just been increasingly getting worse. Started with, 1G and 2G and 3G. These are generations of technology and different signaling characteristics, different frequencies. We are mostly experiencing 4G right now and some 3G. And we're heading into the era of 5G, but it's really been hyped, and it's not really here yet into any great degree, even though they're promoting the 5G phones and making it sound as if they're in many cities. In fact, they're just doing some testing in a number of cities in a few square blocks there. It's really not pervasive at all when you look at the actual maps. And but it's not to say we shouldn't be concerned. We should be equally concerned about 4G, which is think of this as energy. It's electromagnetic fields are energy. They're frequencies that are being pushed with power, and so the power is a factor in risk, but so are the frequencies. And so the big issue is that our FCC, our federal government, does not acknowledge the risks from the non-powerful frequencies. They only acknowledge the risks from the frequencies that are being pushed with a lot of power. And because then they know that can heat tissue, and they think that that's the only risk. But in fact, the frequencies themselves, even if they don't have a lot of power behind them, have shown to have equally bad effects on biology, if not worse in some cases, and even paradoxical effects where the lower the power, the higher some kinds of effects, like the neuron death in the brain and so forth. So just because you're might be a couple rooms away from a wireless router and you think, oh, that's better, well, it is from the perspective of power, but it's not from the perspective of those waves that, so it's a complex subject. The 5G, the fifth generation, is going to, right now, what is being installed is has to work with 4G. So we're getting a double whammy. Though the 4G antennas are what are mostly going up on these utility poles. You see them around more and more now, and they need to work with the 5G because the 4G will always be for voice and the 5G will be for data. So, faster downloads, that sort of thing. So wherever there's 5G, there'll be 4G. It's also a directional technology so that it won't be blasting you unless you're calling for it or somebody in your vicinity is calling for the 5G. Then it goes direct to you. So it's, if you're in a crowded room or in a crowded place and you might be going through your body pretty intensively. But anyway, there's a lot of effort right now to stall this to prevent further antenna densification in our neighborhoods, which is their plan. You know, we've gone from increasing the antennas indoors with the Internet of Things, with antennas in all your electronics and your refrigerator and, you know, everything today, to now antenna densification outdoors, on utility poles and municipal infrastructure, where they're planning transmission of 5G from space satellites. So we're going to be totally blanketed in this stuff unless it's stopped, including antennas that can be put on your neighbor's home, your neighbor's roof. Right now, there's a lawsuit to fight this, but right now, your neighbors could conceivably take money from the telecom industry, like commercial buildings do today, to erect antennas on their home that will then blast you, and you have no control over this. So we're on the precipice of a very serious mistake, and where the antennas are getting more and more, the radiation emitted by the antennas is getting more pervasive, and it's biologically active. It affects the biology. It's a force, and it affects almost every system of the body. And, you know, people might be predisposed to different things, but it's, you know, it affects your brain. It affects the blood-brain barrier. It affects your immune system, your neurological system, your cardiovascular system. I mean, there are thousands, about 6,000 studies now that show biological and health effects from this type of radiation that our FCC is not protecting us against, because their exposure guidelines are only protecting from the thermal or the heating aspects of this radiation. It's a scandal, and it needs to be, 2 lawsuits now against the FCC trying to address this. The exposure guidelines need to change so that they're biologically protective, which they're not right now.
So what are some of the symptoms that we would feel if we got hit with the radiation?
Okay, so I'll tell you a personal story, which is how I got involved in this. I was living in an apartment in San Francisco, and I started getting kind of spacey and dizzy, and noticed I wasn't being very productive. I wasn't getting to my mail, and I was just, I didn't know what was the matter with me. And then I was really fatigued, and so I would sometimes lie down on the bed in the afternoon, and then one day, lying on the bed, I felt heart irregularity, and I was like, oh my God, what could this be? And my vision changed. The eye doctor said, are you unwell? So your vision has really changed dramatically. So myriad of different symptoms. And it turned out that new neighbors had just moved in. They put a wireless router on the other side of the wall from my pillow. And after about 2 months of this, I was non-functional. I was really having a hard time, but I figured it out. I got to the bottom of it. I started reading the science and started meeting the scientists and realizing this was a huge issue, and decided, okay, I could give a year of my life to helping these scientists to explain what they know. But little did I know that this was like another tobacco scandal where the industry was pretending that there were no risks. And so it's been quite a journey. So any number of symptoms, but headaches,
Wow.
Insomnia is a very common one. Like if people have insomnia, I recommend turn your cell phone off. Turn that wireless router off if you have one. Actually, you should try to hardwire everything ultimately, but just do it as an experiment one night, and you will see how amazingly well you sleep. And that's the kind of learning that we all need to experience to believe the effects of this radiation.
So you're saying turn off your cell phone. What about Alexa if you have Alexa next to your bed?
I say unplug those sort of things.
Unplug anything.
Anything that's a radiating device.
Interesting. Now, does radiation affect communities in urban areas more than suburban?
Well, yes and no. If you're living in an apartment complex and you see 30 wireless networks on your computer, you're being affected. Now, they may be far away. There's a way to measure, what you're exposed to in an apartment building. We can talk about that in a minute. But So yes, it's denser. You're going to be exposed to more, but you can also find very pristine areas, even in New York City, back apartments, older buildings like brick or stone buildings, as opposed to the new modern ones, back apartments, higher floors. So you're not near any antennas that might be at the lamppost level, or sometimes you see them on 4 or 5 story brownstones on antenna farm. So there are definitely risks in the city, or if you live in the city and you live in a building that's got commercial stores on the first floor, those often will have their own router system. So you need to understand that and protect yourself. And we can talk about how you do that. But going back to the country and more rural areas, you could have like 0 and it could be just fabulous. Or you could have the bad luck that you live near a cell tower that went up. Or maybe you have a smart meter on your home that's radiating also. And those newer utility meters, you want to try to stick with the old analog ones if you can, or opt out of the new ones because they're digital and they're radiating and they can cause a real problem. So I want to say that every situation is unique. Every situation needs to be assessed with a meter. There's no guessing, because you could be really surprised sometimes that, oh my gosh, it's really low here. Or, oh my God, look at these levels. They're super high.
Right. So we're going to get into, you sent me all this wonderful stuff from shieldyourbody.com, and they actually sell meters here where you can go around your house. Do you have a meter with you now?
Yeah, I have a couple meters I can show you.
Thank you.
This is one of my favorites. This is the electrosmog meter. It's a TESS electrosmog meter. It's 3 directions. So you can, once you figure out the levels, you can figure out what direction it's mostly coming from, and hunt down where the sources are. And then there's the newer safe and sound meter, which has sound in it. And you can hear, it will give you, you see mine is green because I don't have high EMF where I live, because I use the Ethernet cord. We're not on a wireless connection right now. Actually, some neighbors did move in, and I had to across the way and they had a router, and I was devastated. I was like, oh my God, this isn't happening to me again. And it was. So I had to shield. And in fact, if you have that industrial aluminum sample that I sent you.
Yes.
It's a high quality aluminum. It's not just any aluminum, and it's you can't get it at like Home Depot even. You've got to get it professional. And I, by the way, have a store site too. It's called EMF Safety Store. And so you got it. So I had to put this on the 2 walls, and then I covered it with linen fabric so it looks nice, but I blocked it and I got it down to 0 on the meter.
Wow.
And that's why mine was green.
So my neighbor's right here. So what would I do? Do I put this on the wall?
You would put this on the wall. It comes to roll, and then it comes with, you can get tape also that seals the panels together, and you need to make it in the same material. Otherwise it seeps through if you don't. It's just amazing how if you leave the slightest bit of an opening, it flows like water. This radiation flows like water. So it'll get through and it'll get into your whole space. So you really got to seal it well. And because it's aluminum, it'll attract electric fields, which you don't want. So you need to ground it. And there's a kit that comes, something that you glue onto that, and you put it into the 3rd prong in the outlet, which is the ground. It has a copper wire in it, and you easily ground it. And so that's what you do. If I had known that originally, like how to shield, or you can use fabric. You can use, this is an example of a very good quality, thick stretch silver fabric. That and then there are also fabrics that look like linen that are very pretty. They're not as shielding as this, but they'll do the job just for like curtains or areas where the levels aren't that high.
So the first thing you want to do is get that meter and see exactly what's going on in your home. Is that right?
That's right. And you can either get one that it has the units of measurement, or you can just get a simple one that is simply the sound, where you can go around wherever you are, and this one's cheaper, and you can get a sense of what the levels are. Or you buy, you know, the bigger one, which is, I don't know, around $400, this Safe and Sound one. And
how much is the one that you had in your hand before that you said?
This one, I've seen the price go down over time, so it might be around $300. You can get it on Amazon. And it's gone down so much that a lot of the stores aren't even carrying it. So then there's you also have other exposures to what's called dirty electricity. And this is a dirty electricity meter that you plug into the wall, and it tells you what are called Graham-Stetzer units. And then there's another company also that makes similar green wave. And then to whatever degree you've got a problem with dirty electricity, which is the radio frequency, high frequency transients on the electricity curve, you plug in these. These are plug into your outlet, and it will reduce it down. You want it below 40. So that's important to know about dirty electricity too, because it's caused by any kind of change, pulsing in the direct and alternating current. So dimmer switches, if you have a lot of those in your house, you're going to have a dirty electricity problem. If you have a smart meter on your home, you're going to have a dirty electricity problem. If you live in a very rural area with poor power quality, you may have a problem. So it's really important because there is some evidence that it's linked with cancer clusters. So you've got the radio frequencies, and the microwaves are what microwave band of the radio frequency spectrum is where most of the wireless technologies and cell phones are. So you got that. Then you got the electric fields. Then you've got the magnetic fields, which are, and those are low frequency, whereas the radio frequencies are higher frequency. But magnetic and electric fields are important too. And a cell phone, for example, the battery emits magnetic fields, and it's also got electric fields, which actually get very high when you're charging. So you got to be aware of all of these. I don't really use a cell phone. I have one, an old-fashioned flip phone, and I made myself a little case that anybody can make. I made it with this really good quality shielding fabric. 2 layers of it were needed. And you just unfold the top, you slip the phone in there, turn it over, and it's kind of pretty, you know, and stretches. And so, or you can leave the top unfolded if you're expecting a call, so you can still hear, but the rest of it, like any antennas around the side of it, will be covered. And then I made, for when I travel, if I go to stay at a friend's house, sometimes they have wireless and they haven't listened to me enough, but sometimes they have wireless. And so instead of asking them to turn it off, in some cases it's very easy for them to do it. In some cases, a pain in the neck. So I made myself like a table. It's like a placemat made out of beautiful linen, shiny linen fabric. But inside it is several layers of this. So all I do is I throw this over their router overnight, and it blocks about 99% of it out.
Wow.
So I sleep well. So otherwise I would have a problem sleeping well.
So where do you get these materials from?
You go to emfsafetystore.com, and you can get materials there. You can get meters there, books, holsters, like do you want to show them the cell phone holster?
Yeah.
This is developed by R. Blank, who is the son of the late Dr. Martin Blank, who was one of the leading scientists in this field from Columbia University. And the way they work is they shield you from the radiation on the inside side of your body. So it can get a signal. It's still radiating outward, but it's not going into your body.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think he's done the same thing with that backpack. Same thing. You want to make sure you're shielded on the side of your body that's going to be against. So if you want to put your, iPad or whatever in there.
It's a great looking bag too.
Yeah. And it's still not complete. It's not like shielding the whole thing.
Yeah.
Some people would prefer, but for the majority of people, they'll be okay with that. Although there is, there was a science study done by Dr. Beverly Rubik that looked at the blood under the microscope when one was carrying a cell phone in a backpack and when one was using it. And even just carrying it in a backpack made an enormous difference. The blood clumped together more, it just was misshapen red blood cells. And, but she should really do it again and measure it with this backpack to see how much of a reduction. Certainly there'll be some reduction in that from the shielding aspect of the backpack.
Yeah, of course, of course. It's such a shame because you can't see it. You know what I mean? Like we do everything we can to protect ourselves from cancer with what we put in our bodies. But this is a big, this is huge. So what do you see a couple of years down the line for us as human beings? I mean, do you see a lot of cancer more or?
Well, we already know that the cell phone radiation is associated with about 10 cancers. And alarmingly, more recently, there was a study that showed the great increase in colon cancer in young boys, probably related to putting their cell phone in
the back pocket. Yeah.
But there's already, like for example, there was a very large animal study done by the National Toxicology Program, which is part of the NIH, and thousands of rats and mice. And took a long time. It was a $30 million largest study ever by them. And they showed in rats the same results for the same type of glioma, brain tumor, and heart tumor that have been found in humans. And then right on the heels of that, another study in Italy by the Ramazzini Institute also found the very same thing. So there's clear evidence of heart tumors. There's some evidence for the glioma. That it's really worth focusing on this, given how many people are using cell phones. But equally important, I think, are the fact that the first animal study also found 920 different kinds of abnormal neoplasms and non-neoplastic lesions in 13 bodily systems of these rats. So everywhere in the body, there were abnormalities, 920 different kinds in virtually every major system in the body. So that should be our warning sign that it's, with longer time, maybe they would become metastatic. We don't know, but it sure doesn't sound good. And so I'd say anybody trying to avoid cancer would best not use a cell phone at all, or keep it off all the time and use it just like for emergency. Turn it on, make your call, don't put it against your head, keep it away from you on a speaker, away from you on a table, perhaps, and make your call and then turn it off. And that's how I use it when I travel. I keep things off.
So all of the electronics turn off, your printer, your computer, the monitor.
Yeah, the printer is one of the worst in terms of the levels of the radio frequency radiation. Wow. So many times I've gone into people's houses to try to help figure out what's going on environmentally. And my God, that printer is off the charts high. And so that you want to program it to, you want to put it on the hardwire. There's no reason to have a wireless printer. You can just put it on an Ethernet cord and hardwire the connection. You can even hardwire a cell phone and an iPad. A lot of parents are doing this for their children. This just goes right into the iPad, this end, and this goes into the Ethernet cord. And they can use it on a really solid connection when they can put it in airplane mode and not be exposed to the radiation.
Can they get that from the website you gave to us before?
Nope, this is an Apple. This is an Apple product. It's called a USB Ethernet adapter, and then it's got two things attached to it. It's got this and then it's got the that's the Ethernet cord, that's the USB, plugs into this, and that goes into your phone or your iPad.
Interesting. So if you're starting to feel lethargic, if you're not feeling yourself, why don't you turn off all your electronics, right? What'd you say, for a day, and see how you feel?
Yeah, overnight and for a day would be great. When people are really frazzled by this constant radiation, and a lot of kids are today, it may, one of the symptoms, it makes you irritable, and so they become very difficult children, and so they're gonna learn a lot about how it helps them, but they may be also so addicted to it that they need more of a digital detox. And the digital detox programs are 4 to 6 weeks. And there are now all these internet addiction camps. There are hundreds of these camps in China, by the way. And it's really sad what's happening there, but there are more and more in the US. There are more digital detox coaches, but it's really tough. But when you stop this for 4 to 6 weeks and then add back little by little, a little bit of technology, you see what level you can handle. Some people, according to Dr. Victoria Dunkley, who wrote the book called Reset Your Child's Brain, about the 4 to 6 week program she puts people on, she says they get off their psychiatric medications, their performance in school dramatically improves, and that some kids can't go back to any technology, or they go into this addiction thing again. What's not well understood is that it's not just that the content is interesting, that kids want to be on and play their games and all of that, but there's actually the electromagnetic fields themselves are addictive. They increase your endorphins. They are like, and video games and things, they're all dopaminergic also. So if the parents just put the children on a hardwired computer, they would have less addiction. So do the experiment and see. But based on what I know about the electromagnetic fields themselves being, supporting that addictive process, it would be a smart move for any parent, not just for the biological and health reasons that we know of, avoiding all these different diseases and imbalances in the nervous system and the cognitive function, all these other good reasons, but just for the addiction aspect of it, hardwire your children's computers.
Absolutely. And especially you were talking about the pandemic, on how this really affected children, because now they're at home and they have no choice but to be in front of their computer.
Yeah, I'm actually, as I've been an activist on this for over a decade, and I'm actually really happy that the pandemic has opened up so many people's eyes to this problem, because they're using it and everybody's on their Zoom conferences and the kids are on it. The kids are miserable and the learning isn't so great. And they're missing out on a lot of things, of course, that would be beneficial. But I think that people are sort of fed up with this extra emphasis on tech, living meshed with technology, and they're starting to realize how important it is to get outdoors, to themselves and their children, to get outdoors, to be circulating with people, to be calm and not always on a stimulant. These computers are stimulants.
It's true. As a 40-year-old woman not growing up with this, I seriously am addicted. It's terrible because this is my job, So tell us what we can do right now to make a difference in our life, please.
All right. So just recently I did a presentation all about it was called 100+ Tech Life Balance Tips. And it was a talk given to the Digital Wellness Institute about a month or 2 months ago. And people can go watch that at one of my websites, manhattanneighbors.org, which stands for Manhattan Neighbors for Safer Telecommunications. And really watch that, because I break it down into the different things you can do to stop the attention fragmentation, and to stop all these different categories, and a special category for risk to children. What can you do with your children? But it's all about counterbalancing it and filling your life with the things that really add value, and figuring out, I mean, the best thing is to figure out what matters to you. You know, what are your values? We never really had to think too much about them. You just kind of knew what they were. But in today's technology world, we need to be thinking, what do we value in life? And then you might come up with, well, I really value friends. I really value family. I really value being in nature. I really value, you know, whatever, learning about life, you know, whatever it is. Yeah. And then you got to look at your life and see how aligned it is with your values. I did a spreadsheet once that was showed that, let's see if I can remember the numbers, that if you were just online, if you were online for 5 hours a day, and you let's make assumption that you only had 15 waking hours, and the rest of the time, let's say 9 hours you were asleep, okay? So 15 waking hours, and of those, you were online 5 hours. So that's a third of your life that you are giving to the technology. But some people are online 9 hours, you know? And so we really need to be stepping back and say, wow, do I really mean to give 9 out of 15 hours a day to be stimulated on the internet, as opposed to, you know, relating to people, enjoying life, being creative, manifesting things, following your dreams, you know? Am I just going to sit here on the computer being stimulated like this for the rest of my life? We need to make choices, and powerful choices, and like never before.
Please head over to manhattanneighbors.org to learn more. To purchase protective gear for your gadgets, go to emfsafetystore.com. And you can purchase your copy of Camilla's book, The Wireless Elephant in the Room, at Amazon. Thank you for tuning in to Making a Difference. I'm your host, Melissa Billy Clark. If you'd like to learn more about our show, please visit our website at melissabillyclarkshow.com. If you'd like to sponsor or be a guest, email melissa@melissaclarkshow.com. Let's make a difference together.